Welcome to the Making of Me podcast, where we explore the defining moments and experience that shape who people become. Our today's guest is Dr. Robin Buckley, executive coach, couple coach, and PhD trained psychologist with a background in clinical psychology and cognition behavior strategy. She helped individual, couple, and organization build healthier relationship, stronger leadership, and more intentional ways of thinking and relating. Her work focuses on the core ideas that many of the struggling people face comes from the roles they have learned to play and the pressure to appear perfect while losing connection to themselves. It's really a pleasure and honor to have you on the show, Dr. Robin.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So, Dr. Robin, what does playing roles to achieve perfection look like in your early life?
That is when people think that they need to be something other than who they are in order to achieve their goals or to be perfect in a certain place in their life. So that could be personal, as in being a mom or being a parent. It could also, or being a spouse. It can also be in your roles professionally. So what you think someone in your position should be or look like, instead of exploring what really works for you and what aligns with who you are.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So, when did you first realize that perfection wasn't actually working for you?
Yeah. So, I wish it was sooner in life. I would say just in the past, maybe even 5 to 10 years, where I realized for much of my life, I was stepping into what I thought was who a mom should be or
Yeah,
who a professional woman should be instead of just letting it be me. And when I finally let that go, it allowed for such an intense level of creativity and problem solving and success because I didn't have to feel like I was faking it. And the imposter syndrome went away because I was just being me in an authentic way in all my roles, but
mm,
not playing a role. I was me within that role.
yeah, amazing, amazing. So, what was the emotional cost of maintaining that version of yourself?
Oh my god, it was exhausting. My gosh, it was so tiring to strive for what I thought was the perfect whatever, mom, spouse, professional, and it depleted me, and it didn't allow me to ask the question of what do I really want? Or what do I really want to accomplish? Because I was trying to chase an ideal that was established by external factors rather than internal wants. And so that exhaustion just led to some disillusionment with where I was in life. It didn't allow me to be fully present and enjoy where I was and who I was with.
Mm,
So once that went away, it was like the lights turned on and then I felt charged and excited and less anxious about what the choices I made, even if they failed, because at least it was a choice based on what I wanted.
yeah, amazing, amazing. Yeah, being that it was the choice you wanted compared to where you were just making believe it, which wasn't
Right.
convenient for you. Yeah.
Right.
So how did your background in psychology influence how you saw yourself at the time?
Hmm, that's a good question. Again, I think that well, I'll be honest. I didn't sit for my licensing exam. I made a choice not to follow that path, at least in the past. And I beat myself up about it for a long time. Why didn't I do that? I did all
Mm,
my classes, I finished my dissertation, I had my PhD. I just chose not to sit to be a licensed psychologist. I went down the school psychology route, which is a different process. And when I realized that that was okay, I made a choice when I was younger. It wasn't something that I wanted to revisit later in life. And so again, it was that idea of just because I made a choice about my education didn't mean I had to follow it in the
yeah,
direction that a lot of people do. And once I let that go and that pressure of, well, I have my doctorate in psychology, that's what you're supposed to do,
yeah,
instead of it's just not what I wanted to do.
yeah, amazing, amazing. So what helped you to start on learning the ideas that you had to perform to be accepted?
Yeah. I would, again, love to tell your audience it was something internal, but I think it came down to choices of who I surrounded myself with, who became my core personal board of directors. So, first and foremost, I made a choice about a partner. after 2 failed marriages, but my marriage now is to someone who accepts me for all my qualities, good and bad, and doesn't expect me to do anything except be me. And when you have that luxury of having someone who knows who you are, I mean, I had the benefit that we had been friends for
Yeah.
20 years, so he knew me inside and out. But I didn't have to perform at some level. I didn't have to give him anything other than who I was. And all he wanted for me was that, to be me, which included what I wanted for success, what my drive was putting into me. And so I started to really look at the people that were my personal board of directors, and made some conscious decisions about who I allowed on that board and who I didn't. So my sister's on that board because she's also allows me to be me. One of my good friends is on that board, and then a newer friend is. But that's it. Those are the 4 people that are my core group. Everyone else can be friends and people I enjoy time with, but they aren't the people that I can be completely authentic with. Those 4 are enough for me to be able to run ideas by or practice being me in more conscious ways. So it started external, but it certainly had that internal ripple effect.
Yeah. Yeah. That was really a whole lot. And the fact that, yeah, you were able to correct it later on with someone who really understood you for long. Yeah, amazing. So how did that inner shift change the way you relate to others personally?
Yeah. Weirdly, I don't expect much from other people. My
Mm,
expectations they're not low, they're just not there. And
yeah,
what that allows is for people to be who they are and me not to then have negative reactions to when they're being authentic, because I don't have an established standard of, well, you have to be this way. I'm expecting you to be this way, which typically leads to disappointment because people aren't going to live up to our ideal in our head. So when I allow people to be who they are, then it creates room for that flexibility of where they fit in my life. So I'll
yeah,
give you a really good example. Here, I forget where you're based, Aro, but for me in the United States, there's a lot of division around politics. And I have learned to have people in my life who have very different political agendas or different political perspectives because I allow them to be them. They have
yeah,
that. I don't have to accept it. I don't
yeah,
have to like it, but I can still connect with them on some level. I can still see the qualities in them that I can respect and I can accept as friendship, even if I very much want to distance myself from some
yeah.
of the other aspects of who they are. It again allows for more authenticity. It also allows me to speak up when they do say something that
Mm,
I don't agree with. Whereas in the past, I might have been more hesitant because I didn't want to hurt the friendship. But now my belief is if I say something in a kind, respectful way, that it's simply sharing my perspective and they don't accept it, well, that tells me more about them and where they
yeah,
may or may not fit in my life. So
yes,
I think that authenticity to myself allows there to be more authenticity in my relationships with others.
yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing. So what will you say to someone still living inside a
Mm.
perfection vision of themselves, especially for those who are teaching who have not discovered anything about vulnerability and in terms of understanding relationship? What will you say to them?
I think to start, it's allowing yourself to start asking what you want from yourself and from life. We're often not taught that. We're taught that that's selfish
Yeah,
and that we shouldn't
yeah,
put our wants first.
yeah, yeah,
What I've come to realize is that by saying what you want and going after it isn't selfish, it's self-preservation. Selfish is when we say what we want and we expect everybody else to do it
yeah,
for us. You know, you need to help me do this, so I get it. That's selfish. But me saying, "Hey, this is what I want and this is what I'm going to go after, and if you want to join me or if there's any way you can help,
yeah,
great. But otherwise, I'm still going to do it." That's not selfish. Selfish is imposing your wants on other people. So when you start asking yourself, what do I really want? It taps into who you are instead of, "Oh, I can't ask that because that's not being a good mom
yeah,
or it's not being a good person." If you're asking for something that you want that doesn't hurt other people, that is simply something that's really a goal of yours, that's amazing. And that's where you start to become more authentic. That's where you start to know what's really important to you.
yeah. Amazing, amazing. I think this is really lovely being that a whole lot of person also have the this idea that yeah, you shouldn't want anything for yourself, or more like something have a definition of what you definitely want for yourself. And even the book, even the Bible will make reference of it that yes, of your neighbor as yourself. This simply means there's an element of you loving yourself first before you might get to love others to the extent it means to
Absolutely.
love in yourself. And I think it just people when you make reference of the fact that what do you truly want for yourself? When you get to define it, it become easier for you to give to the betterment of the community, being that you know what sense it means, more like I'll get in that particular perspective compared to when you don't even know what you want for yourself. Then how do you know
Right.
what is right for the others? Yeah,
Exactly. How do you know who you are if you don't even know what you want in life, whether it's
yeah,
again, personally or professionally? So, I often encourage my clients, to do some kind of reflection, whether it's walking meditation where they allow themselves just time to think about what's important to them, or journaling, or simply sitting in silence for 10 minutes and just letting yourself breathe and letting those thoughts come in of what you want. My belief is that in our current world, we are distracted by noise and
yeah,
stuff all the time. The moments that we truly get to know us is sometimes out of boredom and silence. And it's hard for a lot of people to allow for that boredom and that downtime and that quiet. But that's when we really hear the whispers from our internal voice. And if we don't do that, we're not going to be able to really understand ourselves.
yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much. Let's dive a bit into the work you do. So you use cognitive behavior or strategy in your coaching. How does that actually more like help people?
Yeah, it helps people because it helps them control the one organ they don't think about much, which is their brain.
Mm,
So when we're talking about cognitive behavioral, it's how does your brain affect your behaviors? And within behaviors, it's your emotions, your reactions, and everything starts with our thoughts. Everything. When people are like, well, I just feel what I feel. I'm like, no, you don't.
yeah,
Everything you feel comes from a thought. And if you don't notice your thoughts, then you can't control or at least it's much harder to control your feelings and your reactions. So if I come into the kitchen after this interview and my husband had said he would get to the dishes because he was done with work before me, and the dishes are still there in the sink, and I feel irritated. Now, I could react to him, which won't go well because I will get irritated and my tone will be irritated. I might say something that's frustrating to him, or I can say, "Okay, am I irritated because he didn't do the dishes, or am I irritated because it feels like what I asked when I asked for help, I wasn't important enough for him to do it?" That's the real heart of it. It's not that the dishes aren't done, it's that I
yeah,
didn't feel heard. And when I know that, then I can say to him, "Hey, I don't feel like you heard when I really needed that help, and that hurt." That's a very different way to start a conversation than, "Oh my God, you said you do the dishes. What is wrong with you?" So when we can stop and actually know what's our thought and our real thought, not oh, the dishes didn't get done. The dishes aren't important. It's that I didn't feel heard. That's what's important. And that's really a pretty basic example of cognitive behavioral strategies. It's noticing what our brain is creating in terms of our thoughts so that we can then address the actual root of the emotion or the reaction. And the same goes for stress, anxiety, imposter syndrome, fear, anything that doesn't serve us. We can tap into the thought to then change the thought. And there's
yeah.
lots of wonderful cognitive behavioral strategies to do that. But it starts with noticing the thought.
Noticing the thought and being able to interpret what is going on there so that you could actually more like put your message out there plainly without having to kind of cause a whole lot of havoc.
Right.
Yeah, it's really amazing. So what is now the difference between couple therapy and couple coaching in your approach?
Well, I love that. I love that question. So couples therapy in essence is going to be about clinical issues. So clinical issues would be certainly anything that's a psychological diagnosis, but it'd also be things like a recent affair, a recent loss, a recent addiction, a recent abuse. Those are things that it's important to start with therapy. It's going to explore the past and be very often very emotional for a couple. Couples coaching and couples therapy tends to be more intervention. So things are really going wrong and the couple's coming in for help. Couples coaching ideally starts from a place of prevention and proactive approach. We don't want to get to the place of crisis. We might feel like things are a little off, so we're coming in for help. And coaching is going to focus on what's going on in the present and what is our plan for the future. So there's not going to be there's no clinical issues are not addressed in coaching and should never be, but it's really helping a couple decide what do they want in a very deliberate way. And my approach brings in a lot of strategy and a lot of objectivity, which also differs from therapy. So there's a time and place for both. I think almost all couples can benefit from coaching because there's always tweaks we can make to our relationship to make it better, more satisfying. And I usually joke with people that, you go see your doctor once a year, you see your dentist twice a year, women see their gynecologist once a year. But when it comes to our relationships, we just hope and pray things are going to work out. And I'm like, oh my God, we would never do that with our health or our finances or our job plan, but we do it with our relationships all the time. And it boggles my mind.
Yeah, amazing. True. Yeah, we get to kind of get to see those particular end every now and then. That was what made it secure. And I think it just seems that is how the world is in a bit cheated out, being that when it comes to the most important things, there is no even studies to it. Just the way you make reference to it. While we're in school, nobody talk about money, nobody talk about connection, nobody talk about
Right.
relationship. Those are the key ingredients when it comes to society. And still, the same relationship when it comes to health, people go every now and then. And when it comes to relationships that get to bed every of those particular intricacies. And yeah, people hardly talk about it or have conversation or actually reach out to have one
Yeah,
of the different perspectives.
we never do. We don't come up with a plan for our relationships. We just hope and pray that it'll work out. And I don't know of any important area of life that people hope and pray. We don't hope and pray we're going to have enough money to pay our bills. We don't hope and pray that we're going to have groceries or a career. But when it comes to our relationship, we enter into it with no plan. We base it on love, which is wonderful, but having a plan doesn't take away from the emotional
Yeah.
aspect of relationships. It actually supports the emotional aspects of the relationship. So the more strategy and the more of a planful approach couples have, the better all the good stuff, the love and the sexual attraction and the romance can be.
Yeah, amazing. So lastly, what are some of the patterns you have often seen in both couples and leaders that block healthy connections?
So what are some of the obstacles? Oh, I think some of the biggest obstacles the biggest obstacle is lack of communication. They don't they think that when they're talking about their kid's schedule or how to get the dog to the vet or who's going to meet up with the carpenter, they think that's communication and it's part of communication, but it's not everything. And so it's not forgetting that, when most couples start with dating, they're learning about each other. I don't care how long you've been in a committed relationship, there are still things to learn about each other, even after all that time. And so I strongly recommend to couples, and the couples that do this see the benefits, is that 5 minutes a day. You can do it as long as you want, but at least 5 minutes a day, you sit with your partner and you be with them in a real way. So not on your phones, not watching
Yeah.
TV, not distracted by the kids. You just sit and talk or sit in silence. I'm okay either way, but you're with them. So after our call, actually today, I'm going to do my 5 minutes with my husband. We
Yeah.
sit and we have espresso every single day just for 5 to 10 minutes. Sometimes it goes longer because we get into a great conversation, but we're there together. We're not talking about our kids. We're not talking about work. We're not talking about grocery shopping. We're talking about us or him or me. And that's where couples really flourish. So communication and connection are the two things that couples who are struggling miss and couples who are succeeding really have.
Yeah, amazing. Everything rise and fall on communication. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Also,
You're
Dr.
welcome.
Robin, from all these who would love to reach out, our either for coaching sections or to reach out for one or two questions, how can they reach out and where's the best part?
Absolutely. They can go to my website, drrobinbuckley.com. They can email me from there. They can get in touch with me through phone or from WhatsApp, but I'm always happy to do that. They can also find me on lots of different social media platforms. So TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, I'm all over. So they can always reach out through one of those platforms as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Robinson. Thank you for this conversation. Your journey is a reminder that healing often begins the moment we stop performing actions of ourselves and start becoming honest about who we are. It's a pleasure and honor to have you on the show, Dr. Robin.
Thank you so much.